Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Yankee Cowboy Podcast. And today's topic is Week 4 of the NFL, and I have to say, it started with a bang and ended off with a lot of excitement going on to the Monday Night Football game. And I think we have to kind of go back and look at what we really saw here. At the day of this recording, news came out that the head coach of the New York Jets was fired as of about 11 a.m. Eastern time, closer to the 10 o'clock window Central time. And that's probably the first time in history of the New York Jets in a very long time, in the modern era at least, that the New York Jets have made a change um, at the head coaching position during the midseason form. So, and the last time I did that was with the coach Lou Holtz, and that was a unique experience as well because they also ran a shorter season back then in the NFL. So, kind of dive into the NFL season week 4. Kind of like I said, it ended with a really exciting game between the Buccaneers and the Falcons. Um, but I think it'll be remiss if we didn't kind of elaborate more into how this New York Jets saga elaborates more into it. It started with the 9 a.m. game out in London between the Vikings and the Jets, and that was a 23-17 onslaught by the Vikings against the Jets. Aaron Rodgers had a very unlike Aaron Rodgers type day. 29 for 54, interceptions, touchdowns. Very uninspiring day. But Mr. Garrett Wilson did have 13 receptions for 101 yards. So it was definitely a unique game that started the Sunday window. But what was the theme? Was the teams that are good stayed good. The teams that were mediocre were not. So keep that in mind that, overall, this is the NFL season. Parity doesn't really exist until about week 10, where you start seeing these teams that are just above the rest. They're right now though, you're starting to see that level out, right? So we can kind of keep going through these games here. For example, the Chicago Bears going against the Carolina Panthers. While it was a very successful game for Mr. Caleb Williams, 304 yards passing, a couple touchdowns. Carolina is still what Carolina thought them to be, which is a dumpster fire. And realistically, I think you know going forward, I don't expect much out of Carolina. I suspect them to be more along the lines of the first 4 draft pick scenario down the stretch here, even if they make a change at quarterback or which they have done. So I don't see them winning. I see them. Andy Dalton's going to do what Andy Dalton does. He might get himself 5 wins this year, and he'll compete for a top 5 draft pick at the end of the season. The same could be said with the New England Patriots and the Dolphins game. Okay. And I mean this respectfully because New England Patriots are my team. But Jacoby Brissett was not the answer at the quarterback position. They're going against the Miami Dolphins, who arguably does not have a quarterback that is worth noting. They made many mistakes throughout the game. The Dolphins did, and the New England Patriots only put up 10 points on them. So, as of this recording, which is October 8th, an announcement was made around earlier this afternoon that Drake May will be making the start with the New England Patriots against the Texans this coming Sunday, which is a really, really big ass week 5. I thought this Drake May show was going to go on to at least week 10, but the fact of the matter is that it's going to week 5 is a very, very historical step because this is what happened with the Tom Brady era. Drew Bledsoe got hurt, so for whatever reason, and could not continue, and Belichick went with Brady. Gerard Mayo is having a very unique experience because they're 1-4. They're gonna have to make some serious down the stretch here. I don't think starting Drake May is a good choice. I'm not saying he's a terrible human being or a player. I just think it's not in the right choice, right good thing right now for his development as a player. And I think, it's a kind of a knee jerk reaction to what this 1-4 situation might be. The Browns and the Commanders, which by the way, this is the kind of the game I believe this game and the game I'm going to talk about in a few minutes here kind of got really the ball started with the calls for fandom here and the fans, the hyperbolic fans around the world. The Commanders beat the Browns 34-13 in Washington, D.C. And here's the thing, guys. The Commanders are all the way back. And it's not for the lack of effort over the years for the Commanders. I think there has been some serious talent on the Washington Commanders side for many years. The coaching was between with a lot of different team, just the coaching wasn't up to snuff. You have a front office that didn't really know what to do, and you just had a lot of different things. So what I mean by all that is, but the amount of thank you, Melania. I appreciate you for joining me there. But it's really unique is that the Commanders with Jaden Daniels, who's a rookie, is doing exceptional things, and they're having fun doing it. Now the calls have been made now for there's been some serious calls from the fans across the NFL for Deshaun Watson to be traded, and for this experiment known as the Deshaun Watson show needs to go away. I mean, between the conduct detrimental to the league and the many lawsuits for groping or sexually harassing masseuses, all these things that the Deshaun Watson show has alluded to over the last couple of years, the fans are over with it. They're just tired of it, and it's just over it. Period. I will say, however, it's great to see a good team play and beat the Cowboys in the division, and I'll talk about that game as well with the Cowboys here shortly. But the 1 o'clock games really the game of the 1 o'clock games was arguably the Ravens versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I've said on this podcast that the Ravens are the team to beat in the AFC. Okay, I truly believe that. I understand a lot of Chiefs fans will be very upset with me, rightfully so. You know, actually, and at the end of all this, Joe Burrow needs to reevaluate himself after saying some of the comments he said in the media. And I just think truly he's right. The Cincinnati Bengals are not a playoff team. Also, going forward, I totally forgot about the Monday night game with the Saints and the Chiefs. That game's a joke too. 26-13. Not really something to write home about. It was a Kareem Hunt, Juju Smith-Schuster, Travis Kelce show. So let's get it started. I made a mistake at the beginning of the podcast talking about it. It ended with the Falcons and the Buccaneers. It started with the Falcons and the Buccaneers, and ended with the Saints and the Chiefs. So sorry about that. But continuing on, that game alone with the Ravens and the Bengals going into overtime, that's the greatness of the AFC North. That is genuinely the greatness of the AFC North. And it's an amazing sight to see. When you see that most competitiveness going down the stretch in week 4, a lot of back and forth. Game obviously they're not getting too many chunk plays. Burrow threw for 5 touchdowns. Okay. Derrick Henry had 92 yards on the ground. Believe me when I say this game was back and forth. The Bengals just couldn't close out the game. And the Ravens, still, in my opinion, arguably are the best team in the AFC. Now, listen, you can sit here and say, "Oh, the Chiefs, the Chiefs, the Chiefs." No, pump the brakes. Pump the brakes. You'll see that the Ravens down the stretch against the Chiefs are going to be very, very diabolical on the defensive side of the ball. If they can figure out a way to stop Patrick Mahomes, they're going to do it, and they're going to find a way. But I will say that that game was definitely the best of the the 1 o'clock games. There are a few other games that kind of caught my eye. Was that the Jacksonville Jaguars finally got a win um, against the Colts, which has happened, I think, a couple of years now, where they just, they're terrible, but they'll get a win against the Colts. The Texans and the Bills, very great game. The CJ Stroud show is just an amazing thing. Um, Jared Cook with Buffalo doing his thing. Stephon Diggs against his former team. Um, it really was a pretty awesome game, I think, as well. But I think the Bengals and the Ravens game was definitely the game of the slot of games. Now, there's a few games in the afternoon window, even going into the Sunday night window, that just made me go bleh. They weren't all that great. The Giants and the Seahawks, 29-20. Geno Smith had an day. They still win that game against the Seahawks. You know, uh, it really, the New York Giants running game was really there. Um, just a unique situation for the Giants to come back and win that game. And I think overall, it kind of shows that they can put some games together when they can. Not going to be all the way on the wagon for the Giants quite yet. But the game I am kind of excited about later in the window was the Packers and Rams game. That was pretty awesome. Um, just Stafford doing his usual thing, which he didn't do as much throwing as you would say. He threw 45 times. Um, you know, the Rams running back had 102 yards. A lot of back and forth. 24-19 looks more like a basketball score than does a football score, but it really kind of illuminated to the next game really how awesome it really was. And I think, you know, the next game I want to talk about that kind of throws the NFL narrative into perspective is the 49ers and the Cardinals. And the Kyler Murray comes back and rallies to win the game. On this game was a very back and forth divisional rivalry game that went back and forth. And overall, you have all this offense. This is what the 49ers, I truly don't understand about them. And I'm not trying to be, I would say, mischievous or, it just mean about this, but I don't understand how they have that much power on the offensive side of the ball and they can't close out games. They went pointless or scoreless in the second half, which shows that the defense side of the ball for Arizona showed up to play. And really, it shows that with a little bit of adversity, the 49ers buckle. And that's kind of what you're seeing during these tougher games. And I think if they could straighten that out, I think we might get somewhere. But who knows? The game I would say that was kind of disappointing. These next two games were really disappointing. Was the Broncos and the Raiders, which there's been calls for a trade with Devontae Adams, who's called for his trade. Um, which I'll be very interested to see where Devontae goes. I do see him going now towards the Saints or the Jets, which has been speculated. But I see it now more than ever that the front office makes the move to move him to the Jets to play with Aaron. The only difference is when does it happen? Before the trade deadline? I hope so. But you know, with them firing Sala today, that might throw a speed bump into this. So, um, this game was disappointing. Um, Bo Nix did his job as a quarterback, right? But yeah, they 34-18. Game wasn't even close. Patrick Surtain, the second, had a really great game. Two interceptions. One for I think a pick six. I think so. They broke an 8 games losing streak to Las Vegas in this game. So very interesting experience, if you ask me, to watch that game on the later window. But the next game I want to kind of discuss um, is the Cowboys and the Steelers. Now, this game was a downright disappointment from the beginning, and the NFL needs to kind of go back and reevaluate their policy and procedure on weather and affected games, especially when it comes to Sunday night games for outdoor stadiums, because we've had these scenarios happen here in Dallas on Sunday Night Football. And yes, the game didn't end till later. However, they're an inside dome, which didn't really make much sense. But I digress. This was a weather event, and they knew about this incoming weather prior to the game start, right? So my question exactly was, could they have done a better planning with either pushing it back and announcing it to the fans? I believe so. Or pushing it forward to, like, let's say 6 and working towards that, which I don't think the fans would have been angry. Um, but it's worthy to talk about because them starting a game at closer to like 10 o'clock Eastern was just stupid. And the game wasn't much to talk about. The score was 20-17, and they really didn't have any excitement in this game until the fourth quarter. It was 10-6 going into the fourth. Steelers steal a touchdown, and then the Cowboys score 2 touchdowns in the fourth. One in the last drive of the game, which I mean, I think it was like 28. I think it was less than a minute to go when they scored the last one, and the Steelers did the same thing. The last minute drive they scored. So I just think this game was showing what the Cowboys were all about: mediocre play at its best. And I think changes are going to have to be made at the Cowboys side of the ball to do anything, and it's proven so. So I think that's definitely something that needs to go kind of a storyline down the line is what do the Cowboys do next here, because they are going to have some very, 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 very pretty crazy matchups, week 5 and just in general. And it just it, how do I put it to people? It's literally it's showing more and more that the NFL is somewhat rigged a little bit. I hate to say this, but it is. Like if you look at the week 6 matchups, right? Yeah, the Niners and the Seahawks on Thursday night in Seattle. Pretty reasonable game to watch. You have a game at 8:30 on Sunday. No one's going to watch between the Bears and Jaguars. Okay. Um, on the 1 o'clock slate of games, you have the Buccaneers and the Saints you want to watch, and that's about it. I mean, Sorry, but no one's gonna. I mean, the game that might catch your eye is the Cardinals and the Packers. Um, Ravens and Commanders. That'll be interesting, maybe. But the 4 o'clock slate of games is no better. It's the Falcons and Panthers, Cowboys, Lions, in Jerry World, Raiders versus the Steelers. That's going to be interesting for a 4 o'clock game. The Monday night game is trash. It's a game in New York. It's Buffalo versus the Jets in MetLife. They got plenty of time to make a head coach and see what they can do. So the bye team weeks are the Chiefs, the Rams. Overall, I think it's going to be kind of a bleh type of game, week of games. Um, more storylines to come, but I think we'll be very interested to see what the Jets do, what the Patriots do with the rookies starting, and just overall what continues to happen in the NFL. Appreciate everyone joining me this week, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. Thank you.